A tale of two rockets. But over the last decade, there has been a race between the Hare and the Tortoise of the space industry. In this corner, SpaceX, the fast-moving developers and innovators daring to take large risks in favor of rapid progress and reusability. On the other hand, Blue Origin, the steady tortoise, methodically building its reusable way to the stars and mounting what could be a comeback for interstellar dominance among the stars. But what do their stories tell us about the future of space exploration, and which approach to a rocket is best? Welcome back to Today in Space, the all things space science podcast, where we try to make the complexity of space travel a little more human. As always, I'm your space science podcast host from the East Coast, Alex G. Orfanos, and this week, we're diving into the battle between SpaceX and Blue Origin, or more specifically, the tale of their heavy lift rockets, SpaceX's Starship and Blue Origin's New Glenn rocket. The great thing in this battle for heavy lift supremacy of reusable rockets is that ultimately it's all going to help progress the American space program forward. And there's plenty of room for both to succeed and still have ample work for them to do to help us stay in the lead as America in space and to show what's possible as we are one of the most developed countries in the world, if not the top, at doing space travel. It's going to be a big year for the American space program, but also human space progress. Our first episode of the year, 368, we broke down what to expect in the new year, and it's, for us, it's huge human space progress year, so we talked a lot about that. But we also are talking about the new year and being a new you. That's really the thing that most people go after, right? And for new year, new you, at this point in the year, we've already gone past, Quitters Friday? It's about 2 weeks, halfway into January, the first month of the year, and you've probably already stopped doing this thing that you were going to do to have your brand new life. And it comes down to behaviors, right? And it's no surprise why that statistic is there, right? It's a human thing to go 2 weeks into the year and then stop. Well, what do you think it comes from? I mean, I know from me, I've dealt with that effect in my life, and for me, I'm not even looking at big changes in the new year. It's more focus for me, and that's partly because I've set up a lot of really good behaviors. But I didn't do that alone. I didn't do that by myself. There's planning. There's making sure that I'm getting good sleep. Right? There's working out so that I'm getting physical and using my body and keeping that healthy. It's caffeine, right? Coffee, love coffee, right? But it's also about making sure that I'm not pushing myself too hard. You got to recover, right? That's part of life as being a human. We're not androids, and even androids need to charge batteries unless they're powered by fusion generators. But that's hopefully far in the future. But for us as human beings, we've got to recover, and so that's something that I'm definitely looking to focus in on and tweak and improve over time, and get a lot of progress this year, but in smaller bites. And maybe that's probably what it is for most people at the beginning of the year. If you find yourself already burnt out, could it be that you're just missing some extra nutrients, essentials in your day-to-day that you're losing from working so hard to make this change? That's where something like Magic Mind might be able to help you. Now, we've been working with Magic Mind for a little while here. They sent us a free sample recently. What the Magic Mind helps do is it fills in all the gaps of all the things that I'm burning probably in a higher rate with the caffeine. I haven't done the stats on this, but that's what it feels like, right? It feels like with caffeine alone and with just pure grit and determination alone, you're burning off stuff that's not readily available in my diet, right? And so unless you're going the next step to get all these different nutrients and essentials to have every single day, you're missing out on this, and that could be why you went so hard for 2 weeks and you just burnt up your resources. And so maybe in a few weeks you'll have recovered that, you'll give it another shot. But why let it deplete at all if you can add something like Magic Mind in the mix? And so that's what we do. It works really well. And if you're looking for your mission, if you're looking for your new you, you're trying to build some better habits, some new habits, jump on the Magic Mind train with us. Get 45% off magicmind.com. And that's Space Jam, SPACEJAN. That's 45% off, right? You can get the bundle with the productivity shot and the sleep elixir, which I'm going to be trying soon thanks to Magic Mind, and I'll let you guys know what that's all about. And for me, recovery, I'm looking to add more recovery. Last year was a big year where I made some big steps, started focusing on my sleep, and and taking one step back so I could take 3 steps forward instead of constantly taking, hitting a wall and then what would be a step back is now 3, because I have to spend more time to recover. You don't make as much progress that way. And if there's anything that these people that work at SpaceX and Blue Origin know, is how difficult it is to make continued progress over time. And that's what new year, new you, that's what it all is about, right? You change yourself for the better, get yourself to this next thing, and that's where Magic Mind comes in. So highly recommend it. Go check it out. You can try it out, magicmind.com/SpaceJan, 45% out. Give it a try. And I wouldn't be surprised if people at SpaceX and Blue Origin are using this or something very similar, because it really is about continued progress and the different decisions. And there's a lot of different ways to go about it. And that's what we're going to dive into next. This is a story of 2 rockets that represent 2 very different philosophies in rocket design. On one hand, you have SpaceX, which took a scrappy, fast-paced approach to rocket development. On the other hand, there's Blue Origin. For years, they were focusing on perfecting the BE-4 engine, a powerful and reusable engine that's been in development for nearly a decade. After the near-flawless launch of New Glenn, they are ready for orbital dominance, like SpaceX. The thing about rocket technology is you're gonna feel the pain of development. That's engineering, really. If I'm being completely honest with you, as someone who went to school for engineering, there's a lot of pain of things that you've got to get through to bend reality to your will, right? To know that you understand physics. It's where the metaphorical rubber meets the road of reality, where the metaphorical thrust becomes real, and you find out how many things in reality you need to adjust, or how many things you still haven't figured out. And after studying aerospace engineering in school, and after following and reading books about government and commercial space companies, you have to choose your pain and when to have it. Now let's talk about engineering decisions, the difference between the Tortoise and the Hare. Many young rocket companies hit a wall where the first engine just doesn't have enough thrust or is just a beast to control. So that means it's back to the drawing board once you've tested and found out you need to figure more stuff out. And that drawing board time is doubly expensive in actual cost and time in development. Here is where we can draw comparisons to SpaceX and Blue Origin's approaches. These companies both started out roughly around the same time, at least in space history terms. The Falcon 9 from SpaceX was originally the Falcon 1 for 1 engine, then the Falcon 5 for 5 engines, and eventually became the Falcon 9, which, as you can guess, is for 9 engines. The traditional approach would dictate that 9 engines on an orbital, non-heavy lift rocket, when you planned on 1, is nonsense, so start over. But the Hare of the industry decided that they would make the 9 work, or Elon insisted, and the engineers made it happen. In the end, it put SpaceX in the lead, and they dominated the launch market, with those Falcon 9s reaching 20-plus flights reused. The last one was 25 as a record. So not only are people getting to space more often with SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket, but they're also saving money compared to traditional orbital launch providers. And they were also able to use that Falcon 9 variation to create the Falcon Heavy before New Glenn was even finished. And due to all the practice they had with the Falcon 9, they have successfully returned both boosters to landing zones at Cape Canaveral in beautiful synchronicity. But now the space race has started, with the Tortoise of the space industry launching near flawlessly the heavy lift New Glenn and delivering its payload to orbit. Blue Origin has begun the race. The Tortoise has finally started in the orbital race, and now we have both running for the finish line. Blue Origin has been patient, although not entirely on purpose, but certainly in theory. Can't tell you how many Blue Origin trolls years ago, about a decade ago, that were messaging me that the Tortoise beats the Hare every time SpaceX had an early success. And so you can definitely critique that it's been long enough, and there's plenty of people saying that. But Blue Origin is in it now with New Glenn. And the American space industry is stronger for having multiple heavy lift rockets to choose from. Blue Origin early on chose to develop the BE-4 and tune it for full scalability on every system afterwards. That means the same rocket engine could be used on everything later. You don't have to redesign a completely new rocket. And you can take the learnings from the BE-4 and apply it and have lots of experience with those engines. The BE-4 powered New Shepard to the Kármán line with just one rocket. The Vulcan from ULA uses 2 BE-4 engines, and now New Glenn has 7 BE-4 engines. This is the traditional approach to rocket technology, right? Sticking with the engine that will power your fleet. No need to know multiple revisions or completely different rocket fuels, etc. If we use our very simple equation that we just made up, and then the cost of a rocket engine, Jeff Bezos and Blue Origin have a secret weapon, where the cost of developing a rocket is equal to the literal cost of development in money and the cost in time. While Jeff Bezos is still bound by time, he has the money to pay for the development. And in some ways, that ends up helping with the time variable as well. Jeff Bezos has, in my opinion, not once seemed outwardly concerned with the progress, maybe a little when he fired the last CEO. But with New Glenn having flown this well, they're back on track and ready to start flight cadence in a big way. So if we assume that New Glenn is going to continue its progress and start getting more customers, which means it's going to launch more, and they figure out the reusability side for New Glenn, then we might see Blue Origin start to pull closer and closer to SpaceX with a lot of momentum behind it. And so now we find ourselves in this position where the race has finally started between Blue Origin and SpaceX, and the engineering decisions introduced a really interesting plot twist in this journey of the American space program. So Starship Flight 7 just completed, and while they, for the second time ever, attempted a booster landing at the pad and caught it successfully, which was the hardest part of this whole thing so far, they also had Starship 33 have an issue in orbit, and a giant debris stream, something out of a Kessler syndrome nightmare, happened in orbit. So it makes you wonder about the engineering decisions and the timing of it. If you asked me 4 years ago, the engineering decisions of SpaceX made a lot of sense, and they already had a wonderful Falcon 9. They could do the heavy lift with Falcon Heavy, but they chose to spend the time developing Raptor and this crazy thing called Starship. So that way they would have capability for human space travel that was far and above whatever anyone would have. But with Starship on its 7th flight having an issue in orbit, we still don't know what's going on. We saw that flap of material hanging off the side, which was right around max Q, which is the maximum aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle, so the atmosphere. Its highest impact is that rocket's pushing through the atmosphere. They even have to pull back the throttle on the engines because of the force on Starship. We still don't know this. There's a lot that needs to be discussed. But Starship had an anomaly in orbit, and it is a very large debris stream. And so the FAA will definitely be involved, and that's going to slow Starship down. And that's because Starship is in its infancy stage. It's still being developed. The way that SpaceX is trying to quickly get to the other side of this problem is by making Starship have different things on it each time to continue the testing so that they can understand. So they're changing Starship to adjust over time. If they saw something from the last flight that they wanted to fix, they've been taking out heat tiles in certain areas that would structurally deter Starship and tell them, do we have the physics right? Tell them if their test is breaking their system. And a good test is all about pushing yourself to the very edge of your understanding. And here, SpaceX got caught on the other edge of the understanding, and Starship ended up rutting. Rapid unscheduled disassembly, as they say in the industry. SpaceX is in the pain part of this, of the engineering stage. There is going to be a lot more pain for those engineers and and struggle. Like, I don't say pain as a way to deter people from engineering. Like, if you thought, hey, I might want to get into engineering before this, and now you're hearing it's painful, don't be too scared about that. That's just the reality of tackling something challenging. It means that Starship still has a lot of work to do. I'm sure by Starship 8, they're able to build these starships quickly. They'll get a fix. The question is, how much of a delay are they going to have from the FAA? Because no doubt the FAA is going to have a longer investigation involved, and then whatever is decided to fix what they saw as wrong, who knows when that's going to happen and how long it's going to take to finish, but it's going to delay things. So Starship hitting 8 launches this year may not happen unless they get the fix on this next one or even the second one, and they don't lose any more Starships this year. If they lose more Starships this year, there's definitely going to be more of a discussion about the feasibility of Starship. But that's how quickly all of this could change, right? If you talked to me yesterday, if you talked to me 4 years ago, Starship would have a clear lead, and New Glenn would be a far distant memory, and I wouldn't have much confidence in the scalability of the BE-4 engine. But at least today, on January 16th, after New Glenn has its maiden launch and does amazing, the only thing they don't do is land the booster, and then Starship has another amazing launch, does something that's never been done before for a second time, which is catch the Super Heavy booster at the launch pad, but they lost Starship. So this changing of fate, or at least whatever the roll of the dice was today in space, has been a massive shift in at least today's understanding of the engineering decisions, right? If you're asking me today, the BE-4 is pretty well understood, and their heavy lift rocket for Blue Origin, New Glenn, is based off the rocket they know. And so they're going to be able to stack a lot more learning and continue their progress, assuming everything continues forward. For Starship, this is kind of a ripple in their understanding of how far they are in developing this. So they're going to have to go back to the drawing board, which again is going to cost them time, it's going to cost them money. And with Elon as distracted as he is with so many things right now, I think this is a good moment to refocus and get things in line over at SpaceX and for Starship if he wants to meet the deadlines that he's imposed for SpaceX and Starship. So many things could happen, but from the engineering decisions, this was Blue Origin's great way to come back and have a moment that puts them as serious competitors moving forward for what's to come in space. So in the tail of two heavy lift rockets between Starship and New Glenn, today was a very interesting day in space. And the story, the real saga, has only just begun. We're going to see this year how good New Glenn really is long term and see how many flights they can get, right? Like with SpaceX, you get many launches. They had 100 launches in the year, and you do get a few anomalies. But if you only get 3 or 4 launches out of the other rocket, the question of which is better is certainly interesting. I don't think Falcon Heavy will replace Starship as an option, but I have more confidence at the moment in the Falcon Heavy than I do in Starship in completing something or even sending humans into space. So many things can change, but that's the story of two rockets, and I hope you enjoyed it. So hard to keep up with this this time around between the delays and then the double launch today. It was really, really something, but we'd love to know what you think. What were your thoughts on it? How do you feel about Blue Origin? Did you see New Glenn's launch? And what about Starship? Flight 7, SpaceX. What's going on? It's crazy. We'd love to know. Hit us up in the comments. Let us know what you think. Email us at todayinspacepodcast@gmail.com or hit us up on social. Today in Space on TikTok, Today in Space Pod on Instagram and X or Twitter, and Today in Space Podcast on Facebook. That's it, folks. Don't forget to hit up Magic Mind to get your 45% off the Magic Mind bundle. That's code SPACEJAN for 45% off. Keep yourself sharp because life is not easy. Space is clearly not easy, and so make sure your body's given everything you need to go through the mission you have in life, whether you're on the SpaceX team, getting Starship ready, keeping the consistent Falcon 9 launch cadence going, keeping things operational, or you're on the new Glenn team, building rockets, getting new Glenn ready for the next thing, doing new Shepard launches, and delivering engines to the ULA for the Vulcan rocket, or any of the other companies out there, whether you're in space or not, STEM or not. We wish you a great week. Thanks for joining us. Spread love and spread science, and we'll see you on the next episode of Today in Space.